live on Facebook. Hello, everyone. It's Gayle Hanlon here. Um, Thanks, honey. My lovely homeschool daughter, who now has gainful employment full time. She's a manager. She's awesome. She's 20. She's my youngest. So, if you wanted to know, I actually have five girls and one boy, two of whom were homeschooled the entire time. Yeah, we'll fight over it. Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you for joining me. I am so glad we have this opportunity. I am going to put on the show here to how to be a guest, because if you have questions and you want to ask them in person, or if you can just click this link and life happens. Yes. So I am here prompted by so many questions. Thanks, honey. Um, and I've been seeing so many posts and so many answers, and some of them are right or accurate, and some of them aren't. And I think it may be confusing for people to know what is really going on. So first of all, I am going to introduce myself again, but better this time. My name is Gayle Hanlon, and was I've been homeschooling for 30 years, now on to grandchildren. But we have a lot of exciting things happening, and I've been through 30 years of all the things that could possibly have happened. Now, if you're new coming into homeschooling, you have all these questions, but I guarantee, regardless of COVID, they're the same questions that I asked when I started. And they're the same questions that everybody has when they start. I think something that's truly important is that you believe in yourself and your abilities and your um, knowledge that you are your child's best teacher. Why? Why are you your child's best teacher? Because you have a vested interest in that child. Um, you teach them everything from how to, walk. You're there with your hands and arms open, helping them to take their first steps. You're teaching them how to eat, how to use cutlery, how to sit nicely, how to play nicely, how to speak. That's one of the hardest things for anybody to learn is a language. And yet, as a parent, we are doing that with our children from day one. We're talking to them, we're showing them how to do something. And if we don't know how to do it, we help them learn how to do it by showing our own learning journey. So, I have some questions that come from quite um, some very, very great people. Now, this first thing is from there are many organizations. This first one is from HSLDA, and the second one is the Teaching Home magazine. Um, yeah, so one of the resources that I want to give you is um, OntarioHomeschool.org. That is where, ooh, that's too long. Wait, let me see if I can. Did I type in the org? Okay. If I take out the HTTP, I might get the org at the end of it. There it is. OntarioHomeschool.org. I suggest this first because if you take the time to read through the information and search through what they've got there, um, about 25 years ago, I was the secretary for OFTP, so we did a lot um, helping people and learning ourselves. So, the Ontario Federation of Teaching Parents is the organization that runs OFTP, or OntarioHomeschool.org. And they will have all the legal information too. Now, I am not a lawyer, I cannot give you legal advice. I can just explain certain things that I know from experience. Um, and so, welcome to homeschooling Q&A. If you have a question, hi, Karen. Oh, let me put, how do you put that on our screen? Oh, your screen. How do I put what on my screen? The things. I am using two different programs to do my Facebook Live. One is only for Macs because I use a Mac, and it's called eCam, ECAMM, um, and eCam Live, and it's an awesome program. You can directly stream from that program. It allows you to do all sorts of things like the overlays, but I'm bringing this to you today. I'm broadcasting today now through a program called Be Live, BE.LIVE. So when you go online, look up Be Live. They have a free trial, and it's really great. It makes everything very easy, and you can have it as challenging or as easy as you want. So there you go. All righty. So, and I can also bring in, so Karen, if you want to be a guest, you just have to follow this link right here that's on the screen. And that also, I can bring in media from my Facebook images, and also I can screen share and all sorts of stuff. So if you're interested in connecting with your friends, family, whatever, and you want to do this kind of thing, or if you have a home-based business and you want to connect with your Facebook group, this is a great tool to use. be.live, be.live. Um, all right. So I was talking about different organizations. There are a lot of organizations out there. And like anything, you have to buyer beware. Check the sources. Now, I'm saying that about myself too. Who, if you know me already, that's great. Hello, Michaela. Nice to see you. And so always check the source. So my background, I ran a home daycare for 25 years. When I first got pregnant, I knew I wanted to stay at home with my daughter. So I decided that I was going to do that. And for her to have the socialization, because that's what everybody talked about, um, I wanted to make sure she had lots of kids to play with that were her age. So um, I ran the home daycare. And when she was about 3, I started interviewing schools. What do you say? Interviewing schools? Yes. At about 3, I met one of the most wonderful people to influence my choices that I then made for my kids. And I'm going to hold up this book, Challenging Assumptions in Education. And if you can see her name, Wendy Priesnitz, look her up online. She was, at the time, the homeschooling guru extraordinaire. And she is a phenomenal resource of knowledge. She ran a publication called Life Learning, um, and that magazine came out regularly, and it was fantastic. Well, I was looking at schools for my daughter, and I decided after doing a lot of research and meeting Wendy and some other things that I had some big choices to make. So I had three questions that I asked the public schools, the private schools, including Waldorf and Montessori. Um, I went to um, every type of school, Catholic, um, public, and asked them all the same questions. One, what's your philosophy of education? Two, what's your curriculum and who designed it and why? And three, how can you guarantee that my child can progress at her optimum level and not be held back by other students or pushed too far ahead if she's not ready? Those were the three fundamental questions that I needed answers to. And I have to be honest, none of those schools, none of those systems could answer my questions. Now, Waldorf and Montessori could tell me about their philosophy of education and who designed their curriculum and why. And to a degree there was some flexibility. But do your research. Look into the different methodologies and find out what makes them different. My family's having too much fun without me. Um, you guys are having too much fun without me. Yeah, yeah. So when you ask those questions, you're going to get a variety of answers. But listen not just to the answers, but observe how taken aback they are. They looked at me like I had two heads, which I might, but I and I was also faced with, who do you think you are? You're just a parent. We're the experts. That shocked me totally. I was her mother. Of course I want it. I know what's best for her, and I will choose what is best for her. So, not getting satisfactory answers and not wanting the limitations of the ones that I did get reasonably good answers from, um, I decided to create my own curriculum, my own school. I already had the kids in my daycare, so I hired a music teacher to come in once a week. We went to the library regularly and went to all the programs that they had. I took them out horseback riding, even as young as 2 years old, and I had a babe in arms. The people there were great. They would hold them on the saddle and walk around, and somebody would lead, and I would hold the ones that were too little. So at the time, now the legalities for childcare and daycare might have changed, but I want to be very clear. The Education Act in Ontario really hasn't changed regarding homeschooling, and we'll get into that a little more later, because that's one of the biggest questions that prompted me to do this. So in creating my own curriculum, I also decided, hey, I need to be able to expose these kids to things that they've never seen before. Because primarily that's what gave me joy in teaching and taking care of kids in the first place. Being with them was so amazing that you could, when they first see a horse for the first time and their eyes light up, when they first ride the horse, you're able to help them, calm them, and explain to them what it is, and they get it, and they're amazed. And seeing that spark of uh, love and amazement and interest and passion just was something I really loved helping motivate kids to do. So, that being said, um, I did themes. So one week we had a theme on bears, and another week we had a theme on, um, you know, whatever the season was. So I had done up a whole 52-week schedule of all the themes that we were doing. And so the music lessons were based on that. The books that we took out that week were based on that. And I'm not saying that all the kids were really interested in it, but at a very young age, they are, because they don't know that existed. So you're introducing these things to them. And then as they get a little older, it becomes a buffet style that there is no one way to homeschool. Let me be very, very clear about that. There isn't one right way. Just like school, there isn't one right school, there isn't one right method. Every child is different. They learn differently, they understand differently, and I'm going to get to that in a minute too. So I created a buffet for the kids with some direction, but I have to tell you what happened. I had three kids that were 6 months old. And at the time, because one of them is my own, it was okay. Um, by the time they were two, they knew all the alphabet letters simply from playing games. We had alphabet puzzles. We had, um, I had the alphabet all the way around the room. And so I would sing it, pointing to each letter, going back and forth. I would have the letters spread out on the floor, and we'd play games jumping from one letter to the other. That's how they learned, through play. So by the time they were two, they knew their alphabet letters. By the time they were three, they knew the sounds of the letters. By the time they were four, they were doing between grade one and grade four level tasks. It was astonishing to me, because when people told me it took a month or more to teach how to read a clock, now they're all digital, but an analog clock, I couldn't understand why it would take that long to teach, and why it would take years to teach a child to read. At most, it took me 30 days, just following the things that I had always done with my kids. So now, um, it is important to question, getting back to that, but the differences in learning styles is huge. Remember when I said that you are your child's best teacher? Really take that to heart, because you are the only one that is truly going to know how your child learns. In school, the teachers are there to observe and assess and direct. At home, you observe, you assist, and you direct. You are no different, except that you have the emotional connection with your child. So when you see what I saw with these three kids that I was taking care of, that were all pretty much at the same working level at 2 and 3 years old, I asked them, how many days are in a week? And they all figured it out differently. each one of them figured out a different way to get to the right answer. And that taught me a lot about the way they think individually. So this one thinks this way, this one thinks this way, and this one thinks this way. So there are seven or more, I believe, way more ways to learn. There's kinesthetic and auditory and, just a lot. Look into learning styles. Um, so one of the kids went to the calendar on the wall and went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and counted the squares. Another one did Monday, 1, Tuesday, 2, and so forth. And the other one, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7, did it in her head. The other two couldn't do it in their heads off the bat. So when you observe and play with your children, you will be the most knowledgeable person about how your child learns than anybody else. Okay, so moving forward, I'm going to put that link back up here if anybody would like to join me and ask their questions. So one of the first questions that I'm going to give is, or that I'm going to answer or try to, is why do families homeschool? Good question. Why do families homeschool? There are a lot of reasons, and currently, so many people, because of COVID, have been thrust into homeschooling. So that's their why, perhaps. But there really is a deeper reason why. I think when people have had this time to connect with their kids, they realize what they're missing. They realize that they want to be involved in their child's learning. And please don't get me wrong, I am not against schools of any sort. And that is one of those issues that you come across. As soon as somebody says, this is a better way, or this is what I think you should do, everybody who does other things start to feel defensive because, one, they don't understand it. Two, they are scared that they're going to be forced into doing something that they are not familiar with. So, for instance, people would ask me, why do you homeschool? And after about a million times of being asked that, I decided to turn it around. So I got proactive. I was out with my children and at the park or wherever, at the library, and somebody would come up to me, or I'd go up to them with their kids if our kids were playing together, and I'd start the conversation. So, what grade is your child in? And they'd tell me, and I'd say, so why did you choose public school? Usually, I'd have asked them what school they were in, but they looked at me like, don't you, what do you mean? Why did I choose public school? Don't you have to? No, you don't have to. And that's another question that we're going to answer. But choosing to homeschool is your right in Ontario and internationally. I say that because even though there are some countries whose laws do restrict people from homeschooling, like Germany, which hopefully those lockdown countries will have some learned flexibility from COVID-19. hear it over here. So, even though there are some countries that say legally, no, you can't, um, it is always a parent's choice. Now, they may have to move somewhere where the legalities are a little different. But the reason I say that is because of my own personal experience. When I was, hey, glad you said something, Dean. That's good. Just for that, I'm putting you up on the screen. So there. So, as a child, I was born in England and raised in Brazil and Montreal. And my mother was very ill, so she was not really in the picture at the time. So, it was my grandparents who decided where I would go to school or what I would do. My grandfather was a scientist. I missed about 2 years of school altogether with traveling and being wherever he was to do whatever it was he was doing. So, but I always knew that it was his decision where I went. So my reason homeschooling was because I wanted to provide my daughter with what I knew for myself would be the best um, course of education. Now, that's not to say she didn't have other teachers. Like I said, we got in a music teacher, we got in a you know, writing teacher. We had somebody come in to do all, if they were expert on something, we had them come in and do a little lesson for the kids or a talk or a play group or something. So we had somebody come in and do something on dinosaurs. We had the university Let's Talk Science program. In fact, our homeschooling group in London, Ontario, was the test market for Let's Talk Science, the whole program. Because we had a variety of kids of different ages, our homeschool group would get a bunch of kids together and we'd have them come in and they'd do the project on whatever it was, magnets or something. So we had that opportunity, and you can still have those types of opportunities. You need people to take the lead and to find them, but find a group. Now, there may be a group in your church, and there are a lot of people, which comes back to our why do families homeschool, is that a lot of people homeschool because they want their children to have a firm foundation in their beliefs, and that can mean anything. So, for instance, in my group in London, we were not affiliated with a specific religious building because we were all different. So there was a group in this church, there was a group in that church, there was a group at the mosque, there was like everywhere. But if I wasn't a member of that church or I wasn't a member of that mosque or synagogue or whatever, I couldn't go to their groups. So I went to the library and put up a note saying, if you're homeschooling, and basically when you go out during the day on a school day and there's a parent and children playing in the library in the middle of the day, the first question is, are you homeschooling? So, and 9 out of 10 they are, unless that one of their kids is off sick and they shouldn't be in the library to begin with. But so that I lost my train. That why made us want to have a group. So people responded to my note that I put up at the library inquiring about wanting to start a group for homeschoolers. So we had a home, I was Catholic at the time. My friends were Mormon, Muslim, pagan, Baptist, and we formed our own group. In fact, the Baptist person was the Baptist minister's wife of the church that did have a homeschooling group, but she wanted to make sure her kids had a wider understanding of the world, so she wanted to be a member of our group. that group eventually became um, a different drum that, took off and is still available, I believe, in London, Ontario, and fabulous people. And I'm still in contact with people that I homeschooled with back then, and it's amazing. So, when you find your why, what is your purpose in homeschooling? That's important to know because if you are homeschooling because it's there's some disgruntled ideology between you and the schools, or if you don't feel they're safe at school, like there are people who homeschool because their children are attention deficit and they find that they learn better at home. There are people who homeschool because their kids need extra attention if they're dyslexic or um, there's two other dyslexia is another one. I had a child who had Tourette's. So those things are, there's always motivations and reasons. So there are people who take their kids out of school because they're being bullied. There are people who take their kids out of school because they don't like a certain part of the curriculum. But you have to understand that those people are doing it in response to something, um, rather than a proactive idea. Um, it's a very fine line. You have to be very careful because I have known people who have taken their kids out of school for a disgruntled idea or a problem that was happening, and they said, we're going to homeschool. And they bought this expensive video program, sat their kids in front of it, and went off and did their own thing. That's not homeschooling. And so when it didn't work for them, the kids went back to school and the parent blamed homeschooling, saying homeschooling doesn't work. What she was doing wasn't homeschooling. And that's something that we have to be conscious of when we're looking at ourselves and our why. Like if you like Simon Sinek, go find the video on what's your why. So that's the why. So, and I'm going to read some of these because these are also good answers. Homeschooling makes quality time available to train and influence children in all areas in an integrated way. Each child receives individual attention and has his unique needs met. Parents can control destructive influences such as negative peer pressure and offensive curriculum. Opportunity is available for spiritual training and presenting a biblical perspective of all academic subjects. Now, could be biblical. There are Jewish schools. So this is going to be, yeah, dysgraphia. Yes, is another one. Thank you, Randy. So I'll come back to that. Children gain respect for their parents as teachers, not as dictators. Remember what your why is and remember who your why is for. Your children, you love them. You're emotionally invested in how they turn out. So you want to help them understand. I think it's not unusual that people think they can replicate the school system at home. Well, if it didn't work out there, don't bring it home because it's not going to work. Now, that being said, again, you have to take into account a child's learning style. So, um, if you're not taking into account their learning style, you can't meet their needs. And this is the whole purpose, right? To help them be the best they can be. Uh, the family experiences unity, closeness, and mutual enjoyment of each other. Children develop confidence and independent thinking away from negative peer pressure to conform in the security of their own home. So there will always be narcissists, there will always be control freaks, there will always be um, abusive homes. But people in general don't choose to homeschool so that they can abuse their children. That's off the scale. The vast majority of people homeschool because they love their children and they want something better for them. But one of the biggest fears is if you homeschool, then you're not doing what the school does, and everybody is trained to believe that the school is what you should do. Okay. Children have time to think and explore new interests. You don't have a bell going off every hour or 45 minutes or 90 minutes and having to switch from one subject to another. Communication between different age groups is enhanced. This is a big bugaboo of mine. If I don't want my 10-year-old to learn how to be a 10-year-old. So if the only people my 10-year-old associates with are other 10-year-olds, she's going to learn how to be a 10-year-old. She's not going to learn to aspire to be doing what older kids are doing and learn to be gentle and kind and giving to younger ones. She's going to have that peer pressure that's around her at any age, in any grade level. So learning from older kids and from younger kids, that flexibility gives them a wider understanding. Communication between different age groups is enhanced, absolutely. Tutorial style education helps each child achieve his full potential. So here's what I was going to say before. I'm an unschooler at heart. And if you don't understand that term, we'll go into it in another show. So I am an unschooler at heart, and my daughter was an academic. All she wanted to do was worksheets. I couldn't get enough worksheets. By the time she was 4, she was doing grade 4 level stuff. At 7, she was reading and comprehending at a grade 11 level. She went to university at 13. Not genius, just passionate and loved learning. Not a genius. Just repeat that. Not a genius, but loved learning. Because the way I tried to teach my children was helping them learn how to learn, not just stuff, but how to find out stuff, so that never in their life would they be stuck with just, I know this date, this place, this name. Something happens in their career and they have to change careers. COVID, and I have to adapt. Homeschoolers can adapt because they've learned how to learn. In school, all too often, what I hear from parents is that they don't want to learn. And a top-down curriculum, force feeding, the material here, you have to do this, rather than the buffet style that I was talking about. Some kids will thrive in that top-down. My oldest daughter, academic, and if it was at university, it wasn't academic enough for her. So she was easy. Here you go. She was doing, algebra at 8 years old. I don't know where her brain came from. It was some alternate universe, I think, but she just loved it. And she would be a sponge and suck up everything. So some kids will thrive in a school atmosphere. Some kids will thrive in that academic perspective. Do not think that because I'm telling you about my experience and the experiences I have with other people is that there's one way to do things. There is not. Be open. Get to know your kids. Observe, assist, and support. Um, so that was the first question, and I think there are a lot of questions, but I wanted to address that one first. The second question, and my motivation for coming on today, is the question of, do you have to register with a school if you're choosing to homeschool? And I want to be really clear about this because I have seen the question come up on different pages, and there is yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and it's very confusing. And I know I'm not going to reach everybody, but I do want to be very clear that you will find more information on homeschool.org. But the simple answer is no, you do not have to register. And why do I say that? Because what you will hear is schools and school boards and teachers and principals and people telling you you have to register if you're going to be homeschooling. That's not the law. That is a policy. That's right. There's a difference between policy and law. So I'm just going to put this up here for now. The policy by the Ministry of Education says you should register with the school. That is not you must. So no, you do not have to register with the school. Why do some people suggest you should? Because they might feel it goes easier for them. The cautionary tale that I want to tell you now is of what happened many years ago in BC when they did the same thing. They said everybody had to register. Now, I can't remember whether it was law there or I think it was law that they changed the law, but I may be wrong. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know that. But I know they had to register, or they were told they had to register. Homeschoolers registered. And they were even enticed with some funding. Well, here, when you register, if you're homeschooling, we'll allow you to have this amount of money that you can use to help you educate your children. So the first year, it was all great. Everybody was happy. Everybody registered and everybody got the money and you could spend it on anything that you wanted at all. There was no oversight. No, you didn't have to send in receipts or anything like that. The second year, you had to provide receipts. The third year, you had to not only provide receipts, but they gave you a list of places that were approved for purchasing from. No, you couldn't just pay for skiing lessons or guitar lessons or whatever. You had to use it on things that they prescribed. And now they had everybody on a list, so it was easy. So the next year, the list of where you could buy things from, the school boards. And that was it. And then it was a nightmare for all those people who had signed up. It was like, you know, hey kid, want a candy? Your first one's free. And then they changed the rules. Oh, Arlene, hello. You've asked another question. How can I help my grandson catch up? He needs grade 8 and 9 caught up. He should be in grade 10. Please help me. Okay. Arlene, I'm going to message you after this too, so I can help you with that. And because that's a bigger question than just, but it is doable, and I'll chat with you afterwards. So to finish up the story, basically, in Ontario, we have the new policy, new as of, about 10 years ago, I think, that you should register. It is not law. The Education Act in section 21(2)(a) states a person is excused from attendance at school providing they're receiving satisfactory instruction at home or elsewhere. Yes, I memorized part of the Education Act. And I've been misquoted. It is not a person may be excused. It actually says a person is excused. Now, who is the person that excuses your child from school? That is you. You are the parent. You excuse, not the teacher, not the principal, not the Board of Education, not the Ministry of Education. You can excuse your child from school, and you don't have to tell them about it. There's no legal requirement that you inform the Board of Education or your school or anything. Then the next question about that quote is satisfactory instruction. There is no definition of the term satisfactory instruction. What might be satisfactory for one family might not be for another family. So a Hasidic Jewish family versus a Muslim family versus a Baptist family, or, anything. There is no definition of satisfactory instruction. The third important part that I want to add to that comes under the definition of compulsory education. Now, a lot of you may have heard that. Compulsory education, what does that mean? Compulsory education, now open your mind for this, because it's not what you think. Compulsory education under the Education Act in Ontario means that the government is compelled to provide education for its citizens. Not the other way around. Citizens are not compelled to send their children to school or make use of the education that the government's providing. That is not what that means. Compulsory education means the government is compelled to provide education for its citizens. So you are the parent, you make the choice, and homeschooling in Ontario is legal, and you do not need to notify the board. Or the school, if you do choose to notify them, that is up to you. Absolutely. If you want to go with the policy that says you should, be my guest. You certainly may, and it may work out well for you. Some people are being able to do some courses at school, and now with COVID and the flexibility that's coming in, it may be a freer style, free flow. But there's still that cautionary tale of what happened in BC, and it turned out to be a nightmare for everybody who signed up and registered. So just be aware. It's just keep your eyes wide open kind of thing. Now, I'm going to let people go in a few minutes. Arlene, I want to get back to your question. Um, and I think it's more important that um, we have that longer conversation. So I would go back to the primary thing of understanding what it is that the expectations are, what is his learning style, um, what what is it that he seems to be having issues with, and I can help you with working on that, to help clarify some of those things that might be standing in the way between um, what he's being expected to do and what he wants to do, and what you need to have peace in your home, your heart, and with your relationship with your son, or grandson. Sorry. So I am happy to chat with you later after this. I can my phone number is up on the screen, 289-968-9781. You can text me, and my email is there too. And so please go, everybody. Have the wonderful rest of your day. And I think this is going to be a more regular thing because there's a lot to talk about and people are asking lots of questions. So thank you for staying with me. And if you're watching this on replay or on YouTube, pop your question into the comments. I'm happy to get back to you, and I will look at all the comments and respond to all of them. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye for now.